coming to participate in Y.E.M.I's first community awareness event. Y.E.M.I stands for Youth Ending Mass Incarceration. My name is Shantae Smith. I'm one of the founders of Y.E.M.I. And
my name is Natasha. I'm so excited tonight. This event is just like more than what I really expected and imagined. And I'm glad you guys are here to find out what the awarenesses are for School of Prison Pipeline. And it's entertaining, trust me. Thank you for coming out.
Peace and good evening, y'all. My name is Sasha. I am the chair of Y.E.M.I, and we appreciate you guys coming out tonight.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of history on how Y.E.M.I started. It actually started out as a group project for our school. We are all in college, receiving our bachelor's degree. So we all were in a group, and we decided to work with the youth, but we didn't know what we wanted to do with, working with the youth to find research, something that we all felt like we were committed to. Once we got together, we came up with Y.E.M.I, and it has become more than just a school project. Like, this is something that's going to be going on and on and on. We want to bring awareness to as many people as we can, because this is a serious issue in the urban system as well as the urban too. We partnered up with a nonprofit organization by the name of Safe Deposit Box. It is a male and female mentorship program for youth. So we have the youth here today. They will be doing some presentations, poem, we have a rap, and we also have dance. So it will be a little bit of entertainment. After we finish our introductions, they are going to come on, and then we will have a 5 to 10 minute intercession where we will be setting up for a panel discussion that we will be having, and we will be having pizza in the back to serve you guys, so you guys can have something to eat while you're sitting here listening and getting all the info that you need. So hold on tight, and we're about to get this thing started. I want to talk a little bit about it.
All right, so we're just going to give a little bit of background about all of us. As I said before, my name is Sasha. Right now I work for Hartford Public Schools. I've been there for about 4 years. You see a lot working in schools, you see a lot working with the youth. The school to prison pipeline is something that is not just an issue in Hartford, it's an issue nationwide, right? It's part of a larger conversation which has to do with mass incarceration, right? We live in a country that is obsessed with incarceration. We've replaced social welfare with incarceration. It's become so easy now for you to get locked up, for somebody you know to be locked up, and it starts super early, right? This isn't starting when people are 21 and 22. This is starting when they're kids. This is starting when you're teenagers. It starts as something small, and it builds and it builds and it builds, and before you know it, you're 21 and you're 22, and it's time for you to go out into the work field, and you have a couple bruises on your record. And so I'm specifically interested in the school to prison pipeline because it is part of a larger conversation. It's part of the conversation on mass incarceration. I'm sorry, I had a little break. But that's one aspect of it. Some of my goals for once I graduate, we're pretty much done with school, right? We have like a week left, thank goodness. But it's more about what we want to do after this, right? Because anybody can put together a program, anybody can have a panel discussion, we can talk all day. But it actually is about what do we do with the knowledge that we pick up, right? The school to prison pipeline, a lot of us know that kids get in trouble, but it's actually who's getting in trouble and how that's being handled. So every kid acts up. Minor offenses, right? What are called status offenses. A kid doesn't wear his uniform. A kid talks back. A kid's chewing gum. He has a cell phone. These are things that all kids do, right? Like, stop me when I'm lying. Kids act up. Kids are hard-headed. But the prison pipeline is focusing on who's the one that's being in trouble, who gets in trouble, who gets the disciplinary action, and how it's handled. We're not saying that you can't handle disciplinary stuff going on in school, but it's about alternative methods. I'm a really big supporter of trauma-informed schools, right? We have schools that have PDs and they have these resources and they're not using them. And then we also have schools that are really trauma-informed. So it's not so much about the disciplinary action, but it's more so about what we're teaching, right? Because disciplinary serves a purpose. Discipline serves a purpose, but it's the way that it's carried out that I'm interested in. I'll pass the mic over to Natasha. She actually works for adult probation, so she can offer some insight as well.
So again, my name is Natasha, and I work in adult probation, and I've seen so many cases where a lot of youth, minorities, get suspended from school because they got into a fight or because they were rioting and doing little minor things that they shouldn't be doing. So what ends up happening is that the teachers end up calling the police that's in the school, and because this child is constantly giving the teacher talking and always constantly keep doing stuff, they call the police comes in, incarcerates them. What happens next? So they become prone because now they feel like they're being targeted. So, okay, now the student is upset with the teacher. He or she's gonna act out, lash out, but the teachers and the students, there's a miscommunication there. The teachers do not understand the backgrounds of these students that are in the school. And I feel like if they have that understanding and that communication, a lot of incarcerations could be prevented, especially from in the school. So we are here to try to create this awareness. And in probation, I see it all the time, time after time. So many minority students come in through the system. And it's just sad. It's so sad. It's so personal for me because I'm one also that was a part of school to prison pipeline. Back then I didn't know what it was, but I didn't let it define me. I did not let it define me, and I know that there's more for me out there. So I said, okay, you know what? They expel me from school. Guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna still keep going because they wanna see you fail. It's like a system where they constantly want to keep seeing you fail, and it's hard. It's so easy to get into the system, but it's so hard to get out of the system. And it starts again from the age of even 5. I've seen it, that they incarcerated a 5-year-old for having a tantrum in school, put a handcuff on him and took him to jail, and his mother had to come and pick him up. So it starts from the age of 5, and the school system need to do better. And you know, it's so much things that we want to do and so much things that we want to say, but we can only touch a few. And even if we can just get one person, not the whole group, but just one person out of the bunch, out of what we have here today, we can hopefully create that awareness where changes can come, and talk to your children, and you know the children can understand as well what they can and can't do. We're children, like they're children. Even me as an adult, Sasha and Shante, like we're in class sometimes and we kind of talk. So how can you expect for someone that's younger than us to keep silent or not say anything? It's hard, but they're getting chastised for little minor things like that, where it's placing them where they really should not be placed.
Zero tolerance policies. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back. Zero tolerance policies. Just let that sit, okay? These zero tolerance policies, these play a big role in the school to prison pipeline. Now, we're not talking about violence here. We're not talking about the students that are attacking their teachers. Again, we're talking about minor things, which are called status offenses, that are being treated with these zero tolerance policies. These are things that can be changed, right? We didn't always have zero tolerance policies. So we know that this is something that can be changed. I just wanted to speak on that because you kind of touched my spirit and spoke on that a little bit, Natasha. Good.
When we met with Safe Deposit Box the Youth, first we met with the males, the young males, and then we met with the young females. And once we started talking to them, we started getting an idea and listening to all their stories about issues and things that they've been through while in school, getting suspended for little things, even trying to advocate for themselves, you know, when something is going wrong and they're not even getting the proper help that they need. A lot of the parents don't know what to do, where to go when their child is constantly, you know, getting in trouble or being picked on. Because let's be real, once a child is targeted, and like Sasha said, that follows you through whatever school you go through. If you went elementary, getting in trouble, when you go to middle school, they're going to automatically look at you and say, oh, this is a bad kid, we don't want to deal with it. So anytime that child gets in trouble, guess what? Phone call, suspension, ISS, out of the classroom. Why would you want the youth to be spending so much time out of the classroom instead of getting their education? There needs to be other alternatives that the community, the school, the cities can come together and try to work on, instead of just saying, okay, this child has issues, or they having a bad day and we're gonna discipline them in this way. So just even listening to the youth from Safe Deposit Box and all that they had to tell us, we know that, you know, what we're doing is important, and we know that we need to bring awareness, and that's what we're here for. After school, like I said, I'm going to continue to bring awareness to this. This is our first event, but we know that it is important, and we know that it is happening. From talking to you, from doing research, and like they said, it's all over, it's mass, it's not just within Hartford. It's in other cities. We have some of the kids that went to suburban schools. We have some of the kids that go to inner city schools, and they all had issues. These are issues that can lead up to them being in prison. Once, like the high school kids, once you get suspended and you're out of school, where are you hanging at? Most of them are hanging out in the streets or whatever. What can that lead up to? It can lead up to them getting in trouble. It can lead up to them, you know, having altercations or interferences with the cops. And we don't want that. So I'm here to bring awareness. We're all here to bring awareness, and that's what we are going to do. We hope that you guys learn something from this. We hope that you take something from it. We hope that you can pass it on and understand that the school to prison pipeline system is real. I am going to be the MC, I guess you could say. And we are about to have...
As you can tell, Shantae likes to talk, so she's going to be our moderator because she does it just ever so naturally. And yeah, we're just gonna pull up. You wanna get the video? You wanna pull it up? Is it on? All right, so we're gonna start off with the creed. And then after the creed, we have some youth performances.
So Safe Deposit Box has a creed that they say when they go to their meetings. They normally go on the weekends on a Saturday. So we are going to have them say it for you guys. Safe Deposit Box, can you guys please come up on the stage? Can you guys give a round of applause?
I would say they're a little nervous, but they're really not. So as Shantae said, that this is a mentoring program, both boys and girls, but they meet separately. And every time we open up our program, we open up with a program creed. Something that we live by while we're in the program, and hopefully it'll stick with them when they leave. So I'm going to have Xavier count us out, and we're going to say it all together. Xavier, you ready? On the count of what? 3. Nice and loud, and we're going to say the program creed nice and loud, right? 1, 2, 3. Hello to all my people in the vault. I apologize in advance for how I may come across. It is my desire to command my day, so I'm determined to let nothing negative stand in my way. I'm here today to get it right and learn how to hold on to my plea for dear life. That's all right.
I'm sorry. Next, we are going to have a poem by Xavier and Triana. You guys please come up. And everything is related to the school to prison pipeline. So the poem that they have, someone wrote a little rap, we have a dance. You guys want them up?
What does Y.E.M.I mean to me?
Oh, wait, no. A little louder than that.
What does Y.E.M.I mean to me?
Young people making their own decisions of
What does Y.E.M.I mean to me?
young people making their own decisions of what and who they desire to be.
In short, it means a made-up mind.
So starting today, no one has to be left behind.
Youth ending mass incarceration.
So in the forum, there'll be no big eyes and little U's.
Just Shantae, Tasha, and Shasha trying to take a stand.
And we thank them for choosing SDB to give them a hand.
Here at the Hartford Public Library, having some dialogue.
The first but not the last. Let's work together in creating change for the present and the future and not linger in the past.
Next, we're going to have poem number 2 by Jaheem and Deandra.
From school to prison, what sense does that make? I guess it's all about the decisions you make or the road you take.
From school to prison, nope, not in my plan. I'm working real hard to leave my mark on this land. Fact about it, that's why I'm learning to demand my day. And negative stuff, I'm kicking it up my way.
From prison, a reality for some, it may be, but
no,
no, not for me. Because for their life, I'm holding on to my key, and that key is to success. And for my peers, I'm hoping for the best.
Next, we have a little rap from Damien. Ready? Ready to come up?
Hey everybody, how you doing? How you been? My name is Damon. I'm about to be 10. Sit back and listen as my story unfolds. It's a little bit different from lies I have been told. I'm a boy from NC. I grew up in the city. I made some wrong decisions. People didn't like me. Now it's time to be the best I knew I could be. I even told my pastor, my mom, and other family. Change is gonna come, you will see. I'm not in the mood to be rude. Some people really bother me, but that's just true. I try to ignore them, they push on my buttons. Then it gets us in trouble, suspend it all of a sudden. This school year I have no fear. I'm gonna show respect and be direct. I'm going to ignore them, not let them get to me. I will be the best I know I can be. Now, as my little story ends, to my brother, man, we gotta be best friends. Yeah, I'm ending this with some positivity. Everything I say does not have to be negativity. My mom says I'm a sour patch. Hey, that's good, right? Relax. I'm really smart and a fast one too. I can dunk on the court and touchdown on the field. I am also good at dancing. Watch out, stop dancing. I'm funny, silly, and cute as can be. Hey, guess what, everybody? I love my Hartford City.
All right, now we're gonna have our dance from the Soda Safe Deposit Youth. They're gonna come up and do a dance for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am not a speaking man, and for everyone that said afternoon, you are all wrong. Corrupt yourself. All right. So we have a routine that I've been working on with these guys, and they are phenomenal. And we are about to hit you with it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So.
DJ Chante.
Just to tell y'all a little bit about what we do. What I do with Safe Deposit Box, I have been, this is the title that was given to me, the Arts and Athletic Coordinator. I like that title. And what I really do is just show them how to step and move with me. I like to focus on health, wellness, fitness, greatness, that means of mind, and implement that into our actions by our dance moves as well as in our behavior outside of dancing. This is tough practice. You ready? I'm ready. You are.
Who's gonna play it?
And this is their first performance.
This is an ad for a project management tool called Monday.com. This is what it looks like, and this is what it feels like.
We don't know that song. We don't know that.
After this school, I'm gonna ask them.
Go! 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So we say pull up your pants and put it on your waist and tuck in your shirt and don't hit your face. In my days that me no meditate, so me study for the best, me no procrastinate. Early to school, me no have time for late. See them in no exam for my degree. Me no get nothing less than 98. When school open, me never have my degree. School youth, when no boys so tight. This a no dancing dynamite. You no matter proud, you no see how she fight. Down me you done said, we a top fight. And you see me intelligent, you see me bright. When I come see me speeches, you feel me side. Ask any teacher in the old school, them will tell you say you bring by your dance at a time. Put up your pants and put it on your waist and tuck in your shirt and don't hit your face. In my days that me no meditate, so me study for the best, me no procrastinate. Early to school, me no have time for late. See them in an exam for my degree. Me no get nothing less than 98. When school open, me never have my degree. Kerchief in your toe back pocket and no pen, you go flash it to the dead of flash rocket. You must see no care how much you would have feel if you end up in a casket, in a black jacket. Police no round, they search you, cause you a walk like say you have a Mac 11-matic. When you just drop it, do a bit of jokes, but it just fit you, stick up on it. Never you figure it, pull up your pants and put it on your waist. Tuck in your shirt and don't hit your face. In my days that me no meditate, so me study for the best, me no procrastinate. Early to school, me no have time to late. Sit down in an exam for my degree. Me no get nothing less than 98. When school open, me never have time to late. School girl is a teacher talk. No skirt, nothing else so sharp. Don't break on no mother's heart. If you want to make your life no sad. Sex on something for your right now. Then you know you a say you big love. But you say you no child, you no ready for no child. Just be a good girl, don't be bad. So me say pull up your pants and put it on your waist and tuck in your shirt and don't hit your face. In my days that me no meditate, so me study for the test, me no procrastinate. Early to school, me no have time for late. Sit down in an exam for my degree. Me no get nothing less than 98. When school open, me never got my degree.
Excuse me. I'm just a little emotional. I know y'all can't see it. I understand that. However, I do want to say a couple of these children right here learned this routine probably about a half hour before you guys walk on the screen.
Okay. We're a little bit early, but it's still okay. Ray, do you want to come up here and explain to them why you chose that song and what the song was about?
Sure. And I will give you my face. I'm not blue still. I just didn't want to get caught up in the race. I just try to create a woman equality. Excuse me. I'm Henri. Who am I personally? Like I said, I explained it earlier and what I'm about. Dancing is my life. I've been dancing for over 30 years. So even though I look young, I am kind of old. And the reason why I chose School Youth, if you listen to the lyrics, it definitely touches on specific subjects that we have to pay attention to, that we have to emphasize to our children every day. About going to school, what it is to be a school youth. What it is about going into these buildings and being productive, and it's all you can hear. It's slowly telling you, clearly telling you in a rhythmic format, go in there, do what you must. Understand that you have to study for your math test. You got to do this. Why? Because it's a necessity just to progress into tomorrow. Even if you don't want to do it, you have to do it. Isn't that right? And that's what we're here to do at safe deposit boxes. Ensure that that's what's happening, that they are doing. My biggest thing that I like to tell people is, no child fails in my presence. I'm sorry, that can't happen and that won't happen. Even if they are a little stubborn, like all of us are, right? But I'm gonna work with you all the way through. And just to tell you a little bit about me, just to travel a little bit, if you get the chance to hop on Facebook, follow my page, Element Destiny. There will be an abundance of things going on there. That's where my promotions, who I am, this suit that I have on, this is one of my characters, Blue Lightning. He's striking smiles everywhere. I made you guys smile. And that's really it. Like I said, element destiny, that's the wave. That's what I'm about. Divine destiny, one life, one love, one legacy. That's my motto. It's to make it great. So get ready. Let's go on this journey and let's travel far. And I'll be back because I got a poem piece to share. I don't want to do it now. I want to wait.
It's me.
All right, that was long enough.
Right before we start the panel discussion, we are about to have a poem by Henri Mills, and I'm going to show you a short clip that I wanted to show you in the beginning. The other one was wrong. But I'm going to show you a short clip about the school-to-prison pipeline, and then the school-to-prison pipeline system, and then we will start our panel discussion. Henri, can you give a round of applause, please?
Well, I have a poem. I was trying to record myself while I do it, but, you know, I'm not going to even waste my time because somebody else is recording. So, with that being said, my poem is called I Probably Should Have Stopped. Send a shout out to Brother Kelvin Lovejoy back there, because the first time I ever presented this was at the showcase that we had down at 2550 Main Street. And if you get a chance, take a step in there. You'll appreciate it. I probably should have stopped. 10 years old, running away from home, tired of hearing mama's mouth bickering with my sisters. God, I'm out. Up in school, never worried about grades, always putting on a show. You know, spotlight, center stage. Running the halls till personal security had to escort me. Because, you know, they say I get lost on my journey. But who knew in a few short years that I'd become familiar with guarded escorts. I probably should have stopped. Did you hear what they said? My mother said. No, I said. She said they called me, her son, a menace to society. Now, as we sat in a small back room, she said she knows I am no menace, but I was just 13 and still confused and couldn't associate it with anything more than the behavior characteristics of a cartoon character named Dennis. I probably should have stopped. Now, I'm spinning out of control, rebellious teens focus on streets, girls, sports, and other things. And it was all fun and games until lives got cut short, and now we really learned to mourn. Talents and skills never stopped that man from getting killed, so what make me any different? Am I the chosen one who's chosen, sir? Or am I the lucky one who doesn't realize how lucky I truly am? To be able to stand, to sit, to come, to speak, to go as I please. So many times I was called back to the cage box where the door is locked and you wait on the clock. I probably should have stopped. It's my time. Life has taught me so many things life has taught me. Has life taught me so many things? True indeed. Appreciate everything life throws at you life will throw many things. Brace yourself is what I say. Stand firm on uneven ground. Fight battles through the storms and fire. Clouds will disappear. Bright days will appear. And it is here you will find light, cheers, and fears. I probably should have stopped. But I guess I can't stop. Because you gotta look all ways when crossing on the roads of life, and who better to tell you than I? So I guess I can't stop. Peace.
Now I'm going to show this quick video with, it's just explaining about the school to prison pipeline, how it affects our youth and what it can do and lead to.
The school to prison pipeline. It's a term that describes zero tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests. Getting suspended or expelled means more time away from school, and it doesn't take an honor student to figure out that's bad news. In fact, expelled and suspended students are more likely to get held back a grade, end up in juvie, or just drop out altogether. And dropping out of high school makes you 3 times more likely to get arrested. Back in school, forget about hallway monitors. Students these days often have to deal with school police. Minor offenses that might have landed you in the principal's office back in the day can now actually lead to your arrest. Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates, while a student with a disability is 2 times more likely to get an out-of-school suspension than everyone else. And it's not because these kids are just bad apples. The Justice Department found that black students got harsher punishments than their white peers for doing the same things. So maybe it's time our education system got schooled?
Okay, that was just a little insight for you guys. We are now going to start our panel discussion. So I'm going to call up people that will be a part of our panel. If you guys can come up when I call you in, I'm going to have you give a little introduction about yourself. We have Attorney Darren Freeman. You could come up. We have Calvin Lovejoy. We have Army Mills. And we have, I don't want to say her name wrong, Charlisa Matt. Okay. So, before we start, I just want you guys to go down. Is your mic on, Calvin?
1, 2. Yes.
Okay. Just to introduce yourself, tell the audience what you guys do, what are you here for, why it was important to you to be here today, and then we can start with the questions. You can start with Calvin.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brother Kelvin X. Lovejoy, actually. I'm a community organizer with Blue Hill Civic Association. This summer, we actually have a group of young people, high school students, who are working with us within our Summer Youth Employment Program, and they are studying the school-to-prison pipeline. And interestingly enough, they're actually working to see how they can dismantle that pipeline. But for the last 3 weeks, we've actually been doing some intensive study, how it began, where we're at currently, and then lastly, what we can do about it. And on the 24th of this month, we have a presentation at the Yard Goats, and we'll be presenting our research and our information to the City of Hartford. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Attorney Darren Freeman, and I'm here because I represent some students who have ended up in that pipeline, and I can shed some light on how they get treated once they're on the other end of that pipeline by the judicial system, and give some insight as to how they ended up there.
All right, great evening, phenomenal people. I'm Andre. Y'all just met me like a couple of times. So basically, I am a person who has been through that system. I actually heard in my poem, I went through that pipeline. And as we stand here, as we sit here, I will, expel more about myself and my experiences and the things that I had to deal with and what I still deal with through this day.
My name is Charlisa Matt. I work in the school system. My daughter was in the school system, just graduated from high school. I have nieces and nephews that are in there, and I'm vested in the community. I see this as a problem. It's been an ongoing problem. I have family members that have fell victim to it, and by being in the inside, I see the scope of it even more, so that's why I'm here.
I'm going to start off with you with the first question. Okay. So our first question, we're going to ask each panelist the same question, just so you guys can get a different perspective and different views on, what they think about the school to prison pipeline. So In your own words, how would you explain the school to prison pipeline to youth and families within the community?
I'm probably speaking of the most. To me, it's systematically placed in our school systems. It's systematically placed in society. It's embedded in our school systems. And you look at expulsion for kids of color. You look at the difference in discipline for kids of color. Even when they're in other districts where parents are sending our kids there because of open choice, if anybody was to ever pay attention to the punishments that are given out, our kids of color are the ones that have the harsher consequences, even if it's the exact same. If I was explaining it to someone, basically to me it's targeting our kids, labeling our kids, feeling that they're a menace to society, having low expectations, and then allowing the juvenile justice system to take over minor things that should be resolved in a different way so that they don't end up there, or some type of prevention or intervention before they get there. And then as a result of it, our dropout rates being higher and our kids ending up in the justice system on an alarming rate.
Thank you. Rick? I will. Question is, in your own words, how would you explain the school to prison pipeline to youth and families within the community?
Wow. In my own words, simply put, in the most simple format, all I can say is it's a system that was designed many years ago. Our educational system has been around for over 150 years, right? So, you know, it wasn't geared towards us, and at the end of the day, we got to begin to recognize who's our teachers. You know, and it's not to sit over there and raise awareness, but at the same time, we have to raise that awareness that it's not you that's teaching us. So at the end of the day, I have to begin to realize that that person that's teaching my student, my child, may not be able to handle my child's energy. So with the school to prison pipeline, we're dealing with people who don't understand the community that they're teaching to. So therefore, that's what's going on with me, and that's where our biggest problem is, the miseducation of the teachers.
Attorney Darren?
Yes, thank you. I agree with my brother right here with regard to the system is antiquated, I think. I think that they're dealing with minor issues in a major way now. With you know, when I went to school, we had, like the video said, we had hall monitors. We didn't have people with badges there, and minor offenses were handled differently than they are now. I think now with everything that's been happening in school systems and different school systems, and you know, there's shootings now. Obviously, we have to deal with all of these school shootings. I think that awareness has become heightened, and so now we have security, or we have police officers in the schools, and so they're dealing with things as they would with regular adults or with a regular criminal activity, the regular public, the general public, and I think that they should be dealt with in another way. That we used to, you know, get sent to guidance counselors, where now we're getting sent to police officers. And we used to get sent to the principal's office, and now there's police reports that are being generated. And then, you know, these students are getting expelled from school. They're going to alternative schools. They're acting out even more, and next thing you know, they're ending up in the juvenile system for offenses that have escalated based on, I think, a lack of you know, people's being a lack of cultural awareness. I think that's not really being handled, and I think our model, our school model is antiquated and based on old structures and systems. But that, coupled with what's going on with shootings, I think is part of the reason that we're seeing this this pipeline evolve as it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Calvin?
So, you see, how would I explain it to?
How would you explain the school to prison pipeline to youth and families within your community?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. It really is. I think the way that I have my high school students explaining it, and that's probably the best way, because, you know, they're 16, 17 years of age, and they have to be able to explain a system that is extremely intricate. But we've broken it down into some very simple steps. It starts with behavior. And that behavior comes in contact with the zero tolerance policies. Those zero tolerance policies now, instead of just going to the principal office, it starts a process by where young people are pushed out of school. This may mean detention, suspension, expulsion. From expulsion, you know, the message is, we don't want you here. And the message from the young person is, I don't want to be here. This leads to dropout. From dropout, we go to juvenile justice. They finally wind up in the streets. And once they wind up in the streets, they wind up in criminal activity and behavior that slides them right into the criminal justice system. And so we have helped out our young people understand that an F in school is one thing, and you might be able to work on that, but getting an F in life is a whole nother sentence. We also had an opportunity to look at the film 13 that talked about the 13th Amendment. And we saw the connection, again, what it means to get an F in life. And so what we've been able to hopefully help people understand is that the school to prison pipeline is a system whereby a young person starts off in school with certain kinds of behavior that never gets addressed. And before you know it, they're in prison. Simply put.
Thank you. I like these questions. Okay, ready for the next question, panelists? Question number 2. What are some ways that you think families can tell if they're at risk for being outplaced or expelled from school? Let me repeat it. What are some ways that families can tell if they are at risk for being outplaced or expelled from school? Yes, it can give their child, someone they know, if they think that their youth is at risk for being, getting expelled. What type of risk? What type of things do you see? Get it? Let me give an example. Okay, so if my child is getting in-school suspension once a week, that's something I would look at as a risk, as my child might get expelled. So what are some risks that you guys know about, have research, seen, talk to people? I know you have a child, Matt, and you have family members. So what type of things have you brought to and said they're getting in trouble or constant trouble? Are you at fear that they're going to be expelled or taken out of school and put into an alternative school or something else?
I think the rate of suspension, the rate of referrals, the reaction to certain behaviors definitely play a role in it, because it's as if they're building a case. And once they build that case and it's concrete enough, the likelihood of the child being expelled exceeds. Okay?
Well, I just look at myself, I was an alternative student, not because of grades or intellectual, right now I'm going through it, I'm impaired. Intellectual impairment, I was there for behavioral reasons. And the way I look at myself and begin to fashion when it was over for me is when the calls stopped coming in, the cares and concerns started coming in. And all of a sudden, I wasn't allowed to go to school anymore. So then I turned around and I said to myself, okay, well, what's next? And the very next day, I ended up on Broad Street, 920 Broad Street. So that's my experience.
Okay. Thank you. Tony, Darren?
I think it's a tough question, but I usually don't see them until they've had A, B, C, and D happen to them, and they've been in trouble for quite some time. But I think it starts a lot at the home. At home, if your child is generally disrespectful, it's has an opposition to authority and doesn't follow the rules there, then I think that's an indicator that if they get to school and they're doing the same thing, then you have to try to take some steps to curb that behavior. So I don't see, I've been out of school for quite some time now, so I see them when they're after they've been arrested and charged with a crime.
Okay, thank you. Calvin?
Would you restate the question again, Sister Dillon?
What are some ways that families can tell if their child is being at risk for being expelled or, taken out of school and put into alternative school? What are some risks that you notice or the youth that you deal with have come to you and talk to you about?
Okay. So, with my students, of course, they're high schoolers. So, I don't know how many of you work with high schoolers or have teenagers at home. All right? Okay. So, they always want you to keep it real with them. So when we talk about keeping it real with our young people, I went to Fox Middle School. And my mother worked at Society for Savings Bank. Now, that's going back, if y'all don't know that. That's on Albany Avenue. They were in the Colin Bennett building. And when I acted out, right, and back then they gave you a paddle, okay? I would rather take the paddle than for them to call my mother. Because I knew it was going to be an even greater consequence. And so, when do I know or what might be some indications of at risk? Is when we loosen up on our discipline at home. Home is the first school. Mother is the first teacher. Watch this. Daddy is the first principal. I don't have to worry about the school resource officer. I got a DAD. That's called a dad. And the truth of the matter is, if I can just be honest, you don't mind me being honest?
Be honest, go
all
ahead.
right? I listened to Omar Johnson when he was here in Hartford, and he said this to me directly. He said, "Brother, ADD, that's just absent daddy disorder." I said, "Wow, we need our families to be strengthened." I wish somebody would say something.
Amen.
If our families get strengthened, right, we can put a stop to the school to prison pipeline. Because before Junior act out in school, he gonna get in order at home. I'll leave it right there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry, it was a tough question, but y'all all did an excellent job at answering it. Thank you. So now we're going to go with question number 3, and we got a couple more questions after that. And the food is here, so I don't know if some of you guys may want to get up and eat while I do talk. You can do that as well. Question 3. I'm going to start back with you, Calvin. What is one thing that you think school educators and families can do to support the youth in avoiding the school to prison pipeline?
Very good question. What can school and families do? I was speaking to an individual at one of our local high schools just before the close of school. And there are probably 300, close to maybe 400 students in this particular school. And so I like to, try to get right to the heart of it. I asked, how many parents come to your PTO meeting? Out of 300 and some odd students, that's 300 and some odd families. She said we get 5. We get 5 parents. One of the things that can be done in terms of schools and families, teachers and parents, that they can communicate a lot more. And they can communicate better. Understand that unfortunately we have a society in Hartford where, when I was coming up, if you acted out in class, your teacher said, "When I see your mother at church this Sunday, I'm going to tell her." We don't have that in Hartford today. Because unfortunately, too many of our educators are from outside the city. That's just an actual fact. And we have many educators who teach at our schools, but would not send their own children there. That's an actual fact. What we have to do is ratchet up our care and concern for these children. They are much more than a paycheck. And for parents, the school is much more than a place than for your child to be babysat. Or for them to send because you don't have anything to do during the daytime. It's imperative that home and school really come together on an honest note and communicate. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Question 3 was, what is one thing that you think school educators and families can do to support youth in avoiding the school-to-prison pipeline system?
So I agree with Brother Lovejoy that communication is going to be first, that communication is key between teachers and families and students, and that there should be, I think there should be a different forum other than just, the parent-teacher conference that they have. There should be a different forum where you can go in and you can meet with your educators and you can get an idea of what your child is like at school, whether he's behaving, whether he's not behaving, he or she is doing their work, he or she is achieving below what they should be achieving, or maybe they should be pushed harder. So I think that there should be just there should be another mechanism aside from just once a year or twice a year parent-teacher conference where people can go in and you can meet each other, you can meet the family, you can talk about things and come to resolutions that don't involve police.
Thank you. All right.
Of course, we know it starts like everyone, the home and the school unification. We have to get that piece together. And nowadays we have the internet on our side. And they have, what's the program called that they have now where you can go and check on your children's grades and everything? Power School, but there's something else.
Or
Dojo, Class Dojo. Is it Class Dojo? Yeah, it's Class Dojo. Those are great pieces. However, like Brother Kelvin Lovejoy said, how many people are in those PTOs and how many people are active on those sites? Not a lot. I seen it over there. And that's the problem. First we have to begin to raise awareness in the home. The home is the first place. And from there, we can sit over here and begin to share with the school what is necessary. Because if the home isn't explaining to the school what's going on, then the school doesn't know how to handle what happened at home. Because some of these children are walking in here problematic with problems from home. So now the teacher is dealing with an issue that happened at home. And now she doesn't know how to handle the situation. So now we got a problematic situation on hand that a teacher doesn't know how to handle and the child doesn't know how to respond because he hasn't been properly taught. So now we got a chaotic situation going on, and now we have a child who has been whooshed off because the teacher can't deal with that emotion. She got 30 other students, and then her own personal behavior, has to also play an effect. So she's pushed all those students to the side, take that one, and incarcerate him. I just went to the extremities just because, that's what we're focusing on. Incarcerate him, and then turn around and so she can get back to her students. What we need to do is now take the time out, parents, students, teachers, and begin to learn one another. And that begins with the parents learning your children and the teachers learning your students.
Thank you, I agree with that.
And I can't even just leave that like that. I promise you, because that's like the biggest issue for me. I sit around in schools. I teach up at Washington Middle in Meriden, as well as Lincoln Middle. I do a class there, and I'm dealing with children on a very personal level. Like I talk to them because they can relate to me because I'm childlike. So, I get a lot of information from them. And the one thing that I get from them is that, they're sad. I don't know what's going on at home, but they're sad. And that's sad because now that child comes to school, I'm in the middle of a dance class and the child says, I hate my life. Hold up, that wasn't the comp that we were working on. How did we get to that point, and how did that happen in a state of joy? We were just all in a state of bliss. How did you turn around and hate your life? Now we have to begin to really study intricately what's happening at home. Because if we know what's happening at home, then we can know how to operate with them in school. Because see, at home, you're sending them, you're teaching them everything at home. Sometimes what they learn in school becomes unlearned once they reach home. You understand what I'm saying? And that's just where we need to stop at, and we'll continue this because this is a tough one. Home first.
Yeah, I think there is a gap between the community and the school, so I do agree with you on that.
Home first.
The question was, what do you think, what is one thing that youth can do to, what is one thing that the community and that educators can do when it comes to the school improvement pipeline? What is one thing that you think the community can do and educators can come in together and do to, help lessen the school improvement pipeline system?
Involvement and being accountable. If I know particular things about my child, I'm not going to minimize it and shift it to somebody else's responsibility. If I know that for the last 5 years of my kids' education, these are some of the patterns that different adults have had that I've also experienced at home, I can't keep lying to myself about it. The other part of it is being involved. You either got to stand up and be counted or be counted out. You're your kid's first advocate. So although there are things going on, even if they have a label, even if they have been problematic or there's situations going on, you got to empower yourself enough to be able to fight for them, for whatever is needed for them to be the best person in society and be the first prevention that's in place. It starts with honest communication. I know my kid. So certain things that adults or teachers will say, I can't lie about it. Because if it happened with 5 other adults in the building, I can't pretend. And it's not a matter of feeling like everybody's bullying my child. It's the reality of who my kid is. So the next question is, what are we doing inside that classroom with 20 plus kids? How do my kid interact in this classroom? What behaviors do I as a parent need to work on at home to structure my child so when they get into that classroom, they're not embarrassing themselves, they're not embarrassing me? What do I expect, my expectations of the teacher? What is it that my kid's school year should look like? What are key things that they should be learning? What should I be looking out for that they're lacking? It starts with us. Because there are more parents than there are teachers, than there are principals, than there are staff in schools. And we have to fight and have to be the ones to stop our kids from having inmate numbers, to stop our kids from ending up in the juvenile justice system, from stopping our kids from being killed at a young age. It takes us. Because if somebody do something wrong to them, then we're ready to fight. We need to take that same energy and make people be held accountable. And not in a negative way, but just understanding the process. That this grade is different, that this is who my child is, but they still need to be educated on the level that they can be educated on. And it doesn't just start with those teachers. Because guess what? If I'm in a room with 20 plus kids and 10 of them got issues, you better believe I'm trying to wait for that clock to be over and time for me to clock out so I can have a sense of peace to get home to my kids, simply because I'm in survival mode. But when we come together because we want what's in the best interest of our children, we want our kids to be educated on a level that doesn't allow them to feel that the streets is the best thing that happened to them, that's where it stops.
I love what you just said. I love what all you guys said. All right, question number 4. Then we have one more question. How can parents get in touch with resources for their children once their child is in trouble within the school system? You can go first since you can do that powerful.
It all depends on what level of trouble. If your child has a label, there should be in place a PPT or IEP. There should be a social worker that's in place. It should be the principal, the vice principal, and someone that's handling whatever behaviors, even before it gets to the point where police are involved. The best thing you can do is when they send in those forms home, educate yourself on who is in control of what. So when something happens, you're not arguing with the teacher. I'm going to the behavior tech. I'm going to the vice principal because the principal not there. You got to educate yourself on who it is. There are also organizations that we have within our community that also assist in different things. Depending on your situation, you got to research that. Because we're our kids' first advocate. We're the ones that's going to fight tooth and nail when somebody else can see them as just a number or just somebody else to push by the wayside. So it takes that. And sometimes it's frustrating. It is. Especially when you feel nobody's listening. But you're the one that fighting. You got to fight whether you have ammunition and whether